Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, change-makers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TEPSA Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Nesloney, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you different guests and thought leaders from around the world, and my dear friend is our guest today, and I cannot wait for those of you who have not had a chance to learn from him to get to hear a little bit of his wisdom today. Everybody welcome Pete. Pete, tell everybody who you are.
Oh my gosh, Todd. First of all, thanks for the emphatic introduction. I appreciate that. My name is Pete Hall, and I currently live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, so not in Texas, but I am a big fan of Texas. Done a lot of work in Texas. I visit Texas on vacations, and I'm always a fan of talking to you and chatting with you, Todd. Former teacher, former principal, and current, I like to refer to myself as a professional development agent, somebody PD to leadership teams and coach people all across the world. So I'm glad to be here.
I love it. Well, Pete, today's conversation is one that I know you are quite passionate about, and that is all of us just working and striving to be a better version of ourselves. You've got a book out about it. I know you lead professional development about it. And so I'd love to kind of first start with, obviously, for you to have written a book and still be super passionate about this, there had to be something somewhere that just really clicked within you where you thought, this is how I want to help others, or something that may have happened, or how did that whole process start for you for this to even be a path for you?
That's a really good question. The origin story, right? Like all superheroes and villains all have origin stories, yep. And the difference is how we use them, right? How we use the things that happen to us. And honestly, that's such a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for the actual origin. I can tell you that over time, I've been able to cultivate this, and I've seen that it's a passion and it's something that's really interesting to me. You know, I think a lot of it comes back to the idea of, as I was growing up and I was a young adult, I was always into getting better somehow. And my role models were always like the best in the world. like it was Michael Jordan, it was people that had hit the pinnacle of their careers and the pinnacle of their professions. And honestly, for most of us, that's not relatable. Like, most of us aren't striving to try to be the greatest in the world. So, the LL Cool J was a great, role model for me. I loved LL when I was growing up. I still love LL. But he was always talking about being the greatest. And I thought, yeah, I want to be the greatest. And then the reality kind of sank in. And I'm not going to be the greatest. However, I can take incremental steps forward and I can get a little bit better. So I think that the origin, from listening to rap music as a kid, maybe that's the origin story that kind of alerted me to the idea that you can get better.
I love that. And I think that's such a unique origin story. And so I love that you shared that with us. And so, our audience is primarily school and district leaders, pre-K through 8th grade. Obviously, anybody could be listening or learning from this conversation today. But when you think of that school or district leadership, and I know some people might be listening today going, I want to get better, but I'm exhausted. Like, getting better sounds great, but that also sounds like one more on my plate. And so let's start with that kind of perspective first. For those who are just worn out, whether it's by life, by the job, whatever it is, how can they find themselves reinvigorated to that whole idea of, when I become better, everyone around me becomes better?
Yeah, I love that. And as someone who kind of had to dial it back from the LL Cool J greatest of all time idea, what I landed on, it was this idea of you don't have to strive for huge steps forward. You just strive for baby steps. So when you're exhausted, when you're tired, when you're worn down, you can still take a tiny step forward. You can still tweak something just a little bit to make it better. You can still think through the process of how do I just shuffle forward if I have to, just a little bit. Learn something, try something new, refine something. That's really what it's all about. Because when you couple all those little baby steps together, that's when you end up looking back and saying, hey, I've actually taken a giant leap over the last 6 months, 6 years, as opposed to thinking in the next 6 minutes, I need to take a giant leap forward. We can kind of dial it back. So as a leader, I've really focused my energy on helping folks see what the next tiny little baby step forward is. And just kind of keep that mindset of continuous growth, continuous improvement. There's always room for expanding our potential. Just keeping that mindset alive so that when we talk about the next little baby step, folks are like, oh yeah, that's manageable. I can totally do that.
So, and thinking and relaying that to the team that I work with, I'm an administrator who I want my teachers and staff and team to feel that same way. I want them looking at getting better and striving to do that. What are some things that I could do as a school leader that really encourages them to also focus on the small when they may feel like my plate's already full, like I'm not adding nothing else to it. Like you get what you get and that's it. Like we're working with people with that kind of mindset. So as a leader, how do I encourage them to be doing that too?
I think there's probably 3 things to do. 1 is to model it. 2 is to break down any new learning or any journey into small, tiny little steps. And then 3rd is to share with folks the process of how we can reflect our way to improvement. So let me just take those one at a time. So 1 is modeling it, right? And being explicit about it. Because it's one thing for, me, for you, for anyone listening to this, to read an article, to be focused on something, to want to get better at something, and then to work to get better at it as a leader, and then go on about your business doing that thing better. It's another to be really explicit and say, hey, y'all, I've been reading about this. I know this is a need of ours in the campus, so I've been really working on honing my skill to do it better. And now I'm going to try it. And I want y'all to give me some feedback on how I'm doing as I'm trying this new thing. So being that explicit with folks, so folks see, oh, the leader's learning, trying new things, and asking for feedback and not being so, confident or there's no braggadocio here. And I know that you're like the last person that ever demonstrates braggadocio, Todd. So I know you're not thinking that, but it's just that nice little bit of humility and explicitness, right? 2 is if you think about PD, and we lead PD all the time, and we ask our teachers all the time to do something better, to improve their practice, to better instruction, better management, better whatever. And a lot of times we focus their energy and attention on the highest level of performance. And we say, you've got to be here. You've got to be doing this kind of instruction, this level of expertise. And you got folks that are, a couple steps away from that. So we need to help folks see where they are in relation to that, high level of expertise. Absolutely. And then help them say, what's a tiny little step that we can take together to move closer to that? And when we break it down into those little pieces, it becomes manageable and it becomes something that we're willing to try, right? The 3rd is that process of how we can reflect our way and what does our brain do when we're learning something and getting better at something. And that's something that that I've been working on for 20 some odd years is what happens in our brains as we're getting better, as we're learning something, as we're developing our skills. And there is a predictable pattern of the way that we allocate our mental energy when we're truly trying to get better at something. And it's the process that we refer to as the reflective cycle. And I know you know about it, Todd. And for all you listeners out there that have never heard about that, here are the 4 steps of the reflective cycle. The first step is to be really clear about what your goal is. So I want to get better at this, or I want to take this tiny step forward. The second step is that we very intentionally decide how we're going to work on it. So what strategy are we going to select? What approach are we going to take? And we're very intentional about selecting that out of the field of options. And the third step is the step that most of us get caught up on, because typically as humans, we have what's called SOS, shiny object syndrome. And we have a goal, we come up with a plan, and then we get distracted. Something happens and it deters and detracts our attention. Well, the third step is that we pay very close attention to the cause and effect relationship between what we did and what we got. So if I know that this is my goal and I'm selecting this strategy, once I implement that strategy, I'm really paying attention to how that strategy led to the results I got. And in education, we're famously bad at doing that. Because when things go poorly, we like to say, well, it was a full moon, the kids were naughty, the stupid administrator. And then if it goes well, we're like, well, evidently it wasn't a full moon and the kids just came ready to, I don't know, it was a great class of kids. What am I supposed to do? Here we actually want to I did this, and as a result, this is what happened. Because you have to take that step in order to go to the fourth step, which is to tweak, to modify, to adapt, and adjust, to make it better for next time, right? So then around and around this reflective cycle we go, and that's the way we have to direct our brains if we're really interested in getting better at something. So to answer your question, the third step is, how do we teach folks that? So, right, if we can teach our teachers and teach our staff how to think that way, amazing things follow.
I love it. Well, and hearing you share all that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to re-listen to that 5 times because there were so many good little nuggets in there. But one thing that is still resonating with me that you shared, that was a lesson I had to learn, was that idea of feedback. Of just because you're now the school administrator doesn't mean you can't get great feedback from those that you work alongside of, because not only does it grow you, but it also lets your team see that you don't view yourself as the one who has all the answers. You're still working and getting better too. So I love that. And when we talk about all this, about getting better and striving to be our best version of you, I'd love to know, what are you doing right now to grow yourself or to better yourself?
Oh, that's a good question too. Todd, we talk a lot, and I know you hear a lot about work-life balance and how people are striving for work-life balance. And so I don't believe in work-life balance. I think that's the wrong metric to be shooting for, because what that does is it pits your work against everything else. And what we want to do instead, we want life balance, because work is part of our life, and our families are part of our life, and our faith is part of our life, and our social circles are part of our lives, and whatever, all those different elements, right, are all part of life. So really what we're striving for is life balance. And what I have found in the work that I do, in the coaching work that I do, and in my own personal life, that if I can balance mind, body, and spirit within myself, then I will be effective at work. I'll have good energy at work. I'll be a good husband. I'll be a good dad. I'll be good at home with my family. I'll be good with my friends in social settings. I'll be good at, I don't know, whatever else I do. I go grocery shop and take my dog to the dump in the pickup truck. Whatever it is, the things that I do. When I am balanced in those, I tend to perform at my best. And I also don't get depleted, right? So a lot, and you and I both, created webinars at the end of the school year reminding folks how to stay fresh and to rejuvenate, finish strong, and all those kind of things. And it's sad that we have to do that, because if we're able to maintain our levels all throughout the year, we wouldn't have to remind folks to do that. And we wouldn't have to, extol the virtues of going home and revitalizing over the summer, right? So I have found mind, body, spirit to be the thing. So, I cultivate all 3 of those on a daily basis, and I'm very intentional about it, right? So my mind, I do little things like all the New York Times brain games and stuff every day. So the Wordle and the crossword and the thing. And I try to mix up numbers and shapes and letters and words so that different parts of my brain are being activated. I also try to read for pleasure and read to learn something every day. Keeping my mind sharp, right? Body, I exercise every day. And if you ask my wife, she can tell the difference between whether or not I've exercised, because I am a pain in the you-know-what if I haven't done something that day.
Uh-huh.
And then spirit is really, I speak to that more for myself as just my attitude and the energy that I bring to a setting. So I try to intentionally seek out the positives. I look for things that can be identified as positive. I look for opportunities to demonstrate gratitude and things that I can be grateful for. And I look for ways to uplift others, which lifts me up. So my mind, body, spirit levels, I try to maintain at high levels, all 3 of them, as much as possible. And I can tell when one or the other or 2 of them are lagging, and I have to do something about it.
I love that. Well, Pete, as we begin to wrap up this conversation today, one thing that I always love to end these talks on is just your one thing. I know that anytime you're getting to work with people, you always hope they walk away with something. You hope there's something that sticks within them. And so, for those who are listening or watching this conversation today, if nothing else, you want them to hear one thing. What is your one thing for them?
Oh, the one thing, I think the one thing would be that if you're headed for if you're in professional learning, or if you're in leadership, or if you're in teaching, or if you're in a relationship, or you're whatever the context is, what is the goal? Be clear on the ideal outcome. And that doesn't mean you can't change that and shift it. It's to know what you're going for. So if you're in a conversation with somebody, what's the goal of that conversation? If you're participating in activity, what's the goal? If you're leading a professional development exercise, what's the goal? Because everything that follows really ought to be tied directly back to that outcome. And a lot of times, you know this, we just do stuff in our lives, right? We do stuff in our lives, we do stuff in our work, we do stuff. And sometimes we think, oh, how can I do that thing better? And we forget why we're doing that thing in the first place. So know why you're doing what you're doing, what the outcome is that you're going for, and stay tied to that as best you can. That would be my one thing that I would.
I love it. Well, Pete, if people want to connect with you more, check out your books, check out your resources, bring you to them. Like people, if you haven't checked Pete's stuff out, especially his books, I love his books. How can they connect with you? How can they find your stuff?
Well, let's see. We've got two different websites. The education side of things is educationhall.com. And that's our primary stuff for your education world. The book that you've been referring to, Always Strive to Be a Better You, is actually posted on our other website. That's strivess.com. The little consulting firm we own is called Strive Success Solutions. So strivess.com/the book will take you to that. And I'd love to hear from anybody that has feedback or ideas or suggestions or inquiries, or if they just want to talk about the great conversation that Todd and I just had. That'd be fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pete, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of the TEPSA Talk Podcast. And join us again next week for another all-new guest.
Thanks, man.